Mistaken identity. It was a dull, wintry day in Big City Port. A thick sea mist was swirling round, shrouding everything in a damp blanket of fog, and making the Tugs shiver. Zip and Zug, two of the Z-Stacks, were creeping across the harbour trying to see their way. "Hi, Zug," shouted Zip. "What's that over there?" The two Z-Stacks crept quietly towards a large shape looming through the fog.
"It's an old boat, Zip," said Zug. "It must have drifted in with the tide." "What shall we do about it? We can't leave it drifting loose. It might cause an accident," said Zip thoughtfully. They tied the old boat to a nearby buoy and went to tell Zoran.
Well done," grinned Zoran. "I can sell that boat to Burke and Blair, the scrap merchants, and make an handsome profit." Zoran went to alert Burke and Blair, leaving Zip and Zug to tow in the old boat. By this time it was quite late. Darkness had fallen and the fog was even thicker. Out in the bay, OJ, the oldest of the Star Tugs, was feeling tired and fed up. He'd lost his glasses earlier that day, and as he crossed the harbour he bumped into something solid. He couldn't find his way round it, so in the end decided to stay where he was until daylight. It was no use him trying to find his way back to the Star Pier in this fog. He settled down to sleep. Across the harbour, Zip and Zug were steaming round in circles, trying to find the old boat. "It must be here somewhere," muttered Zip.
"I knew we should have tied it up better," said Zug. "Now we'll be in trouble from Zoran. He was looking forward to getting some money from Burke and Blair."
They became aware of the dim outline of a boat just ahead. "There it is," cried Zip. "We found it at last." Quickly, they attached a rope to the boat to tow it into the yard. As soon as the boat was safely tied up in Burke and Blair's yard, they steamed through the fog back to the Z-Stack Pier. Next morning, OJ was most surprised to wake up and discover he was in Burke and Blair's yard. "I thought I was having a nightmare last night, but it really happened," he murmured, looking around and feeling bewildered. The fog had lifted, and by mid-morning Zip and Zug realised they'd made a dreadful mistake. But when Burke and Blair asked Zoran if the old boat in the yard was the one to be scrapped, they said nothing. "Yes, the boat's in your yard," Zoran assured Burke and Blair. "Zip and Zug towed it in there last night." "Shouldn't we say something?" whispered Zip to Zug.
"No, just think, if they scrap OJ, we'll have some extra work," replied Zug craftily.
Later that morning, Zoran passed the scrapyard and saw OJ in there. A moment later he bumped into Big Mac. "I see you finally decided to scrap OJ," he said. "About time, too." "What?" exclaimed Big Mac. "We've done no such thing." Big Mac hurried round to the scrapyard and found OJ there, looking very forlorn. Fortunately, Burke and Blair had been out all morning, and so hadn't started to dismantle him. "Thank goodness," said Big Mac, looking very relieved. "We were all very worried about you, OJ." "I don't know what happened," said OJ. "Last night I lost my glasses and got stuck in the harbour. I fell asleep and woke up in here." The Star Tugs felt sure the Z-Stacks were behind it all somehow, but no one could prove anything. "At least OJ wasn't scrapped," said Big Mac. "If anyone's to be scrapped, it should be those Z-Stacks."